So first and foremost, I want to welcome you to the podcast. This is truly an honor. I'm very interested in hearing about, the amazing work that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely an honor. Okay, so for the viewers who may not recognize you, could you let them know who you are, where you from, and definitely what do you do?
My name is Eve Blouin. I'm a writer and documentarian, and I edited my mother's book, which is called My Country Africa, and her name is Andrée Blouin. This book was out of print for decades, and I have managed to get it out of oblivion and have it published with Verso in England.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. You got some strong family history. I guess I could ask you this: when did you develop a passion for, writing and also making documentaries? Is this something that you've always wanted to do, or did you kind of get into it later in life?
It's just happened. I always have been. I grew up surrounded by writers, obviously, with my mother, and my father was also a very intellectual Frenchman. So it was almost normal to go to the literature side of life. Um, the documentarian is actually pure luck. It just happened. I mean, we shot a documentary in Haiti and then in Cuba, and it was about literary movements from local literary movements, and I thought it was very interesting. Given the fact that I wrote it so it would follow the triangular um, market. Is that right? Market or trade? The triangular trade. So anyway, so it was very interesting to do so, and also it was awarded, which was quite extraordinary given the fact that we did this. For example, the documentary in Haiti, we did it with my co-director at the time, called Reynald Lecomte, um, just after the earthquake. So it was very, very intense and emotional.
Okay. Wow, that sounds like a amazing experience. I visited Cuba. I've been there maybe two or three times. I definitely had a great experience there. I haven't been to Haiti, but I was studying abroad in the Dominican Republic in 2014. So it was a lot of Haitian students, at my
Yes.
university. So I can ask you, what was that experience like traveling to Haiti?
Uh, it was just like being in Africa. I cannot describe you better than that. The food, the smell, the way they talk. They talk like pidgin in Africa, and it was like a deja vu, as if I was transported from Africa to Haiti. It was extraordinary. Beautiful country, uh, unbelievable art, and dispositions for um, poetry and literature. They really are deep people there. The problem, as we all know, is insecurity and all these. I mean, the governments have to fight all the time, and all these influences, foreign influences, trying to put their paws on the country. And they are not the only one in this case. I guess the whole planet is a bit like that. But beautiful country, definitely beautiful country.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, beautiful country, beautiful people, strong revolutionary history. I was volunteering at an orphanage on my off days, and some of the children that were there were from Haiti. And I think like when they had the maybe it was the earthquake, I'm not sure, but I know in America we was getting the news that a lot of the people they weren't receiving the donations and the Red Cross money and stuff like that. So we was trying to find ways to help out and send money back to different individual,
Well,
families in Haiti.
the problem is that all the money disappeared, as you know. So they are worse than before now. You see, it's a shame.
Definitely, definitely. Now, what about Cuba? What was your experience like there? Was it something similar, or was it totally different? Or
Cuba for me was like being in Africa in the 70s. So you would have the Ho Chi Minh Avenue, all these slogan and sentences written on big banners about the revolution, the brotherhood. It was amazing. It was just like Africa in the 70s. So I liked it a lot, obviously, and I thought that it's such a shame that they've been. People think, oh, Cuba, they can't do anything. But when people never realize that this country has been under the American embargo for more than 50 years, and therefore, how can they have a proper economy and um, be more rich than they are now? So, but apart from that, fantastic, loved it.
yeah, yeah, you made a great point. When people do speak about Cuba, they rarely mention the embargo and the effects that it has on the people in the country, economically, So, and
They
then
don't,
you make the reference.
they don't know and they don't want to know. And people are so oblivious. And when you think of the world as it used to be in the 80s, when I was, in my 20s, uh, the world was so different than it is today. It was mild. It was sort of, I could even say mellow compared to the cruelty that we have reached now in the world as it is now. You see, I mean, even in the relationship between Africa and France. Yesterday, for example, I was talking with some American people, and they were really amazed that Charles de Gaulle was actually liked by Africans. And I said, of course he was. He was, even though he represented the colonial history, it's one of the um, intricacies of the story between the French and Africa. Somehow they were family. It was the France had Africa in the palm of in its hand, and the relationship was not like plantation like at all. And um, and people used to, you would have people traveling there, setting businesses. The African who decided to come to France came to France and did what they have, worked, were employed, but they were no migrants. They were legal. So that's, I think, when compare to how it is today, there's a big difference. And also, um, there was no such hatred as it is today, and the problems with the armies and the fact that now the Africans have kicked out the French um, troops from Africa and the French in general. It started after the around the 90s. You see, before that there was no problems. We used to go to Africa all the time. I had friends from England and from Paris going to Africa all the time, but people don't know. People make this big thing about it's like black and white. There's no in between. There's no subtlety in the way they see the world, probably because they just don't know. That's as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Now, I wanted to ask you about some of the work you were doing in France. Radio Nova. What exactly is that,
Oh,
and what inspired you?
talking about the 80s, yeah, that was yeah, between 1980 and 1985. I was hosting a radio show in Paris in a radio that still exists today, but completely different as it used to be. Um, and I introduced African music because back then people didn't know. People never, they didn't even know there was such thing as African music. You see, so I was hosting this show where I would put African music from Pygmy to Sahara music and Sahrawi and Eastern African and the rumba, the Congolese rumba, and all these things. You see that people, all this genre of music that people didn't know. It was a big success, and it probably opened up an interest that became uh, like. Um, a tendance in France at the time. You see.
Okay, okay. That sounds really cool. Now, did you receive any pushback trying to do that, or were most people kind of on board and welcoming of that type of music?
Oh, totally welcoming. Paris was the platform for African music in those days. Before the um, before the businessman came over, signed up the people, the big companies and all that. You know, it's always like that. That it happens. It's like bluegrass, and then it's money. But back then, you would have bands and musicians from all the places from Africa. They would come to Paris. There were little studios here and there who would record the music, and local record companies would release the albums. Um, and it was just done that way. You know, it was very. I loved it that way because it was the big business was not involved. Okay, that was it.
Okay, okay, okay. Now I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your mom. For the viewers who may not know who she was and what she did, could you speak about that a little bit?
So my mother wrote this book in just after the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. We were a refugee in Switzerland at the time, and she started drafting the her manuscript when we were there. And she had to put, you know, for her it was a way of extinguishing the fire of rage that she was feeling when Patrice Lumumba when Lumumba was killed. So so she started drafting um, this manuscript over there, and 10 years after, 8 years after, when we were then in Algiers, as most of the activists, African activists, and from the planet maybe, but mostly African, were all refugees in Algiers. Uh, Back then, Algiers was the mecca of all the political party. Um, so she started writing this book. Then the book was it was published in America by publishing company called Prager, um, and then they stopped publishing it, and then the book was going to be destroyed, literally. So I managed to got the copyrights, got the. I mean, it's a long story. So basically, this is what happened with this book. Now it's out. It took me almost 15 years to get it back. But talking about mommy, she was born in 1921 in Ubangi Shari, which is today the Central African Republic, and she was born from a merchant and a tribes girl. She was put in an orphanage for mixed race children because back then it did not exist. There was no such thing as mixed race. I know that today you see movies where you always see somebody black in a white neighborhood or in a white scene, because the world wouldn't understand the way it is today how different and the races were back then. You wouldn't have the mixed race people were very rare. They were like oddities almost. You see, particularly in the center of Africa, in central in Ubangi, which is the heart of Africa, which is what Joseph Conrad describes as the heart of darkness. You see, that was there. This is where it was. She was born. You see, so she was put in this orphanage, and she stayed there until she was 17. Then she escaped because it was. She had a terrible youth upbringing there. She was famished. She was beaten, and she had to escape because they wanted her to, forced marriage and all that. So then she had a child with a Belgian man out of wedlock, and then she met a crude and racist French soldier with whom she had a son, and the son died of he died at the age of 2 because he was refused medication because he was a quarter black, and he had malaria, you see, so he just died. And I think that for her, I think that was for her the catalyst of her political consciousness and the will of doing something about the nefarious system of colony. Because, I mean, even though we were in Ubangi, in the heart of darkness, and where petty and cruel local administrators were carried the law the way they wanted, you see. So it was almost lawless, you see. So then she met my father, and that starting that point, things changed completely, because it was a marriage of love to begin with, and my dad was a very intellectual man, humanistic, and he would teach her. I think her political inclination and direction came from him, because he would give her all these books to read and trained her in the world of politics. He taught her all the ideas, and because she had no clue before that. She was a seamstress, you see. And after that, she started her political life when she started working for the RDA, which is the African Democratic Rassemblement, and it was Eve Blouin who from Ivory Coast who created it, and this movement was the prime movement for the independences in Africa. So Sékou Touré, who was not yet president of Guinea, was representing the RDA in Africa, in Guinea, where I was born, by the way, so was my brother. And she joined it. So she became an activist for it. And then she started rallying, and she had a car, so she would go with other activists. They would take like a plank of wood, 2 chairs. She would go and stand on it and started talking to the crowds, to the corner and the corner of the street. But she had such a talent in talking to people, in rallying the crowd, that they decided that she had this talent had to be exploited. So then one day she meets, totally by luck, um, she meets those Congolese activists in a restaurant in Conakry, Guinea. Okay, and those guys were in fact the collaborators of Lumumba, and from the RDA, and which is the Rassemblement Démocratique Africain, and Gizenga. Gizenga was also the man leading it. So they asked her, since she was quite extraordinary because she could talk several dialects and African languages. She could talk Swahili, Kikongo, Lingala, Sango. So they said, look, you have to come and help, particularly with women. We have to bring as many votes as we can in order to get rid of the Belgians and have a fair elections, you see, for the preparation of the independence of the Congo. So then as she was working with Sékou Touré, and she already was doing that rallying the crowd and talking in Guinea. Sékou Touré said to her, you have to go. It's your country. They need you to free it. So it's your responsibility. You have to go. So she left. My dad was with us, the children, and he was very, very pleased that she would take such responsibility, and it was rather dangerous as well, as you can imagine. You see. So she went there and she started rallying people and talking in the bush, and you can read it. Everything is described in her book. The electoral campaign was out of this world. She managed to rally 47,000 women from the different towns, from different cities, from the bushes, from the jungle, from everywhere. And all these people voted, even though it was, women in Africa, in the Congo, particularly in Central Africa, in Africa in general, didn't have much to say at all. But she managed to make them vote, sign a paper, and print their thumb next to the signature or the cross or whatever it was. And as a result, Lumumba was elected it was a landslide. It was like a tsunami of votes. So that's mommy.
Wow, that is truly amazing. I really appreciate you sharing that. That just sounds very empowering. I mean, even to this day, to hear the work that your mom was doing. Now, I can ask you this: is there a difference between the book that was published, I guess, in the '80s, and the book that you put out?
Same thing. No, it's the same thing. It's the same book. No, it's the same book. It's her writing. So it's published exactly the way it was published first. I just edited
Okay.
because there were some things that were wrong and not accurate, etc., etc. But the book is the same. Yeah.
Have you thought about doing a documentary or even a film about your mom's work?
It's, as I said, it's funny you asking that because I don't know if you heard about a movie that is actually has been nominated for the Oscars yesterday. And they are friends of mine. I collaborated a bit to their film, and it's called Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat has won, I don't even know how many awards. Yesterday, they just have been nominated for an Oscar, and I'm pretty sure they're going to get it, by the way. Anyway, so I've been approached by some entities to do a documentary on Mother, and I think it's necessary. I think it's something that should be done because she's probably unique in the world of decolonization. There is no woman in this world; it's all male, and she probably is the only woman. So I think we ought to do something for her.
So, are you working on anything currently, or do you have any future
Well, yes,
projects?
I'm currently working on the probably the some memoirs. I think it might be the continuation of my mother's book of because there's so many the narrative today is so misleading about how Africa was perceived was uh, how it was in the 70s, for example, which to me was the quintessential luminous years of Africa. It was like a renaissance, and it lasted 10 beautiful years. And then the problems and the terrorism and all this stuff that we had to deal after. It started in mid 80s, really. So, so I think it's important to see the energy that was, and to know about the energy that was going on back then in Africa, to understand, in order to understand where we are at now, and how the soft power that France had and the relationship it had back then has been changed to another soft power, and basically it's all about control and of course getting the substance of Africa, which is underground. And so all this war, all this destabilization, all this unrest that we see now is something that was not existing in those days. It did not exist. It was quiet. It was really mellow. And it breaks my heart. It really does. When I see what's happening now and the way it used to be, and I understand when my mother, she didn't want to live anymore because she knew that it was going to be that way. So she had cancer. She was 65 years old. She was still a young woman. She was looking at the world as she died in 1986, and she was looking at the world as it was unraveling in front of her eyes. And she knew that Africa was betrayed first by its own leaders, and then had no chance in the hands of the big powers. And she was such a romantic. She believed so much in the big dream of the Pan-African dream, and that Kwame Nkrumah and Boganda and all these guys believed in. And for her to see it dissolving and disintegrate in front of her, she couldn't stand it. So she stopped taking her medication and she died. And I was watching, I was there, and I couldn't do anything. So it was, I think it is necessary to make this, to give a voice to the way things were and how they are now, in order for people to, to stop this hatred. Literally, it's too much hate, too much.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It's heartbreaking to see. So I just want to thank you again so much for taking out the time to stop by, and I really want to let you know I appreciate the work that your mom and your dad and you have done and continue to do.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's been an honor.